So one of you guys mentioned this. Blake Rogers came in with the $5 super chat and mentioned this. Graceborn is a mod that was originally updated back on June 19th. And what it is an alpha release of an overhaul that aims to turn Elden Ring's base game into a more grim and sinister experience. Introduces functional trick weapons, firearms that can parry, quick steps when locked on, perma night, and many other additions, currently early in development. And you can see some of the pictures, shows some of the revamped environments, some of the weather effects that they're doing, outfits, stuff like that, that all seem to be done quite well. I mean, really looks quite nice. And it just reaffirms for me the frustration that so many people have with this, which is that everybody kind of agrees that they want more of this. Like, they want more Bloodborne. They want something Bloodborne adjacent, related, whatever. And the fact that we still have not seen it at all is crazy, because it's such a layup, right? Like, it just makes so much sense to just do it, but they still have not. And you got to wonder why. And honestly, at this point, I think it's most likely that there is some sort of contractual limitation, or the parties have agreed to do something in the future that's not tied, that makes it impossible to follow up at this point. In other words, I would not be surprised at all if we get a Bloodborne remake or a remaster or something, maybe even a sequel, but that's less likely, at the very top of the PS6 generation, and it's a launch title. Because I think even PlayStation, after all this time, knows that if they ever announce anything regarding Bloodborne, it will pop off and be huge. Like, it will be a multi-million view trailer within a day. It will be a console system seller. Like, it just will be. So I don't blame them for not wanting to drop it yet. Like, why would they drop it now when it would just do really well? Why not wait a little bit of time and reveal it when it's going to really move the needle and help things? Because right now it's like, it'll do well, yeah, but if they launch it at the right time, at the top of the next generation, it will sell millions of consoles by itself. All those people who are kind of sitting on the sidelines like, oh, maybe not, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't, I'll just wait a year, I'll wait 2 years, I'll get it on sale, whatever. If they see this coming, if they see a Bloodborne 2 coming, they're gonna jump on it, you know, no doubt. But we'll see how this mod actually turns out as they continue working on it. They're adding trick weapons. You can see they've done reskins of a ton of different bosses as well, which is above and beyond what I would have thought. But it also makes sense because Bloodborne's bosses are very unique. They have a very unique vibe. The bosses in Elden Ring also have a very unique vibe. But you can see even like the dragons, they've revamped the dragons into being a little bit more Lovecraftian and a little more scary. And revamped some of this. So the pyramid head, you got to put pyramid head in. Yeah, they've reworked a lot of this and it looks pretty impressive. So I might have to try this. I might have to try installing it, downloading and playing it, see how it works. Because I think it's a cool idea. It could totally end up breaking my version of Elden Ring, but the PC version of Elden Ring already runs like garbage on my PC, so I don't think I'd be missing out on much. That's another scandalous thing that somehow doesn't get any discussion, is the PC port of Elden Ring is god-awful, but people just don't talk about it much. We'll see. Hopefully From Software doesn't step in and throw a fit. Honestly, I don't think From Software would be the ones to throw a fit. I think it would be like Sony or PlayStation throwing a fit about Bloodborne-esque stuff. But if it's just like, it's Graceborn, everybody knows what it's doing, just like Palworld. Everybody knows that Palworld is basically just, I mean, it's effectively just a reskin of Pokemon, but they did enough unique stuff that it doesn't cross that line to the point where legal action is possible. So I think they'll probably be okay here. At least I really, really hope they are. But even this is the reskin of the Melania fight for Graceborn. Put on the helmet, turn, swing. It looks pretty good for like a modded reskin. That's pretty good. Let's see how she moves and stuff. Wow, dude. Yeah, redone UI as well. Dude, a modder did this. This is crazy. I don't, does the like whatever system still work? Where like you can recover damage dealt to you? Let's see if he takes damage, if that's a thing. Because if they've gone that far to add that stuff, that's wild. Yeah, still got the move. Yeah, they've added it. Yep, recovered damage based on damage dealt. That's cool, dude. This is wild. Yeah, the rally system, that's what I was thinking about. That's wild. I mean, mad props. Mad props. This is outrageous for a mod. An early build mod. Golly. A second phase? What's the second phase? Still the flower, but now with wings and a redone model. Love it. Dude. They did a good job. They did a good job. This is crazy. Makes you realize just like how badass a new Bloodborne type game would be. But we'll see. The fact that it hasn't happened yet really gives pause. It's like, have they not done it yet because they just don't want to? But Miyazaki said that they would be down for it. It just seems like it hasn't lined up. Because he probably wanted to do Armored Core 6. He wanted to do Elden Ring. And they had already committed to Dark Souls 3 after Bloodborne. So that pretty much, well, and Sekiro was also in there. But if he had like Armored Core, Sekiro, and Elden Ring as his 3 next projects he wanted to do, full stop, and then this was another option, was to do another Bloodborne project, then that would line up pretty well with whatever their next big game is going to be. But I mean, we know if From Software wants to make it, I don't think PlayStation's throwing a fit. I think PlayStation's like, oh, hell yeah, please. We'll give you any amount of money you want. But then again, there's also been all the news of From Software now self-publishing stuff. Yeah, this broke news a few months ago. From Software is now the sole owner of the Elden Ring IP, as the developer is moving towards self-publishing their titles internationally. This is important because prior to this, Bandai Namco, they have been the publisher for all From Software stuff, which is pretty wild, like considering how big their games are, that they don't just self-publish, because every time they hire a publisher, they're giving up a chunk of revenue for those services. So you might as well just get to the point where you can handle it in-house if you build up to it. That's what BGS did. That's what, well, not BGS. They technically had a parent publisher, but that's what like CDPR did. That's what a lot of these companies do. So, yep, just looked it up. Bloodborne is 100% owned by Sony. Yeah, at the very, very least, they have a huge piece of the pie. Even if it's a 50-50 ownership, it's still like Sony's got to be on board. From Software has to be on board. But I get the vibe that either there's a contractual limitation to it, so like only From Software can be hired to make the sequel, or there's something where it's like they know that if they announce Bloodborne 2 not made by From Software, they have to know that that's going to be received horribly. Even if the game is pretty solid, I think even if you went and got like Blue Point to make a Bloodborne 2, which they aren't doing, they've said numerous times they're working on a new IP. But even if somebody really accomplished like them was doing it, I still think people wouldn't be that thrilled. I think you have to get From Software to do it. And I think they know that too. Yeah, let's see. Hidetaka Miyazaki responds to calls for a Bloodborne remake on PS5. Yeah, they asked him in the interview. He said, unfortunately, I've said this in other interviews. It's not in my place to talk about Bloodborne specifically. We simply don't own the IP at From Software. For me personally, it was a great project, and I have a lot of great memories for that game, but we're not at liberty to speak to it. Miyazaki shared a few more thoughts with Eurogamer, acknowledging it made him very happy to see so many fans passionate about Bloodborne and suggesting the game would benefit from release on modern hardware. Quote, I think having new hardware is definitely a part of what gives these remakes value, Miyazaki said. Things you weren't able to achieve on previous generations of hardware, ways you weren't able to render specific expressions. New hardware sometimes makes it possible. However, I wouldn't say that that's the be-all and end-all. I think purely from a user perspective, modern hardware also allows more players to appreciate all the games, and so it ends up being a simple reason. But as a fellow player, I think that accessibility is important. I think that can be the driving force between bringing an old game to a new platform. So I mean, right there, he says they don't have it. We simply don't own the IP. So I have no doubt that if Sony came to them and said, hey, would you make a Bloodborne 2? I think they'd cut him any check he want to make. But the other consideration with this that nobody really talks about is just being independent versus having to follow the whims of a company like PlayStation. PlayStation knows what makes good games, no doubt. But if you're somebody like Hidetaka Miyazaki and you are just a creative powerhouse and you are faced with, we can make a sequel to something we already did that people love, but we can make a sequel and we have to follow the rules and guidelines from PlayStation, who's hiring us to do it, or we can just make our own thing. Like, we could just do our own thing from scratch. Like, they could make their own sort of Bloodborne spiritual successor. Nobody's doubting that. You know, make it kind of a Victorian setting, do whatever you need to do. They could do that, but that independence means a lot to somebody that's that big of a creative powerhouse. You know, I don't think you can discount that. Japan Studio should get credit and helped make Bloodborne. Yeah, they did. It's really unclear because there haven't been a lot of breakdowns on exactly like who did what and how, you know, like where the labor was split. It's just at this point, the fact that it hasn't happened makes me really doubtful it will, because it's like last year there was a PlayStation showcase, which ended up sucking, but there's a PlayStation thing that was going on, and there were all these rumors of people that were like, they're definitely showing off Bloodborne 2. Without a doubt, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. I was like, but it's like one of the biggest and most hyped up things ever. There is no way if this were happening, it would still be secret. Like, this would have leaked so many times over. Because you better believe if any journalist sees even a glimpse of anything Bloodborne 2 or Bloodborne Remake related, they are posting all of it. Like, zero doubt in my mind. It will leak instantly. I'm just not convinced that it will ever like shadow drop or anything like that. I just don't think it can happen.